Hello everyone and welcome back to TPS 4x4 version 644 training. My name is Lewis Weber. During this segment I'm going to be reviewing graphs. TPS offers a plethora of graphs and you can see that they're listed, let's move all the way to the left so you can see the beginning here. It starts from G1 and continues on. I'm going to show you this. It continues on all the way. Well, they're not all graphs, but there certainly are a lot of other tabs, but these are the graphs: J1, J2, J3, R1, R2, the E series, the P series. We can call W sum a form of a graph, correlation D1, AB, and G1, G2, and G3. If we move to the left again, you can see that I put G1, G2, and G3 right after the data sheet, so that's kind of our split right there, and all these other graphs here, but I lead off with the G1, G2, G3, AB, which is academic block analysis, D1, which is an analysis of the number of academic blocks where behavior was observed. It's a really useful table, actually. Correlation is a table. Weekly sum is actually a table. So we're going to review them all. IEP is something a little separate from graphs and analyses, and I'll cover that separately. Some more graphs and you get the idea. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'm not going to give you extraordinary amount of detail for each of these graphs because the training would be too long, and that's not the purpose of this particular segment, which is designed to give you an overview, an introduction to the various graphs. So let's just get into it and let me start talking about this stuff. First, what I'm going to do is click on it, of course, and I'm going to make the screen a little bit smaller so that you can see on the right here we have these convenient purple boxes. Click the name to graph and you can do that. So right now we've got Pete Moss's data showing. If I wanted to look at Coriander, I can just click on Coriander and his data will appear, and Phyllis's data will appear, and so forth. This is a really nice addition to this year's version of TPS. Previously, in order to graph, you had to go back to data entry, and I'll click on Pete Moss's data, and then I would go to G1 for example, and then if I wanted to see Corey's, I had to go back to data entry and click on Corey's data. Now what you can do is you can stay in any of these graphs, and they all have this purple box to the right, series of purple boxes, and you can look at all daily data and just click on the students' names, and it's really convenient. I like it. And just remember, it's out to the right, so if you enlarge your screen, it goes off the screen. So you just got to know it's there. Okay, well, let's take a look at G1. It is displaying, as it says up on top, dots show percentage of rating points earned. That percentage comes from this total right here. Let's make that a little bit bigger. The daily total right here, let's say for Pete, quality of work on 825, 67%. On 826, 73%, and so forth, 21% on 827. Those daily percentages are displayed on G1. So here's quality of work, and here it is, 67%. Now you see what I just did there? I put my cursor right on top of the dot, and if I wanted the exact amount and the date for that matter, it will display it, which is a nice thing that TPS does, because Excel does that for you, and so we can just move around to any dot we want. Alright, there's a lot of things to go over, but for right now I just want to show you quality of work, quantity of work, independence. The fourth increasing goal, if we go back to data entry, you can see the fourth goal is not being used. So it's just left blank, although these phase change lines are still shown. Verbal aggression, disruption, physical aggression, refusal, and transition problems. And those vertical lines that I just spoke of, those are the lines that are created by phase changes. So as you can see, we have a phase change line. If I put my cursor right next to it, 825, And if we scroll up to 825, there it is, phase change. Behavior intervention plan begins with direct BCBA support. I did not collect data on the first day of school, typically we don't, and that way it gives me a spot to put a phase change, not because it's starting something new so much in terms of the intervention, but it allows me to indicate what the initial phase is. So it's nice to start with a phase change line, even if it's just to say start collecting data, and we put that in. So there it is, phase change line. So begin direct BCBA support, board certified behavior analyst support. And then we have some other phase changes that were put in over the course of the school year, and they are registered. Now the dashes that are showing here are very important. These dashes indicate the percentage of academic blocks where the target behavior occurred. So on this particular day, quality of work occurred in 100% of available blocks. And same thing for A26 and A25. 100% of the academic blocks there was some measure other than 0. Now these blocks, these dashes have a second meaning. The second meaning is what was the maximum percentage that the student can earn based on non-zero cells. Now I know that that phrase is a little confusing, so let's not worry so much about that for right now. I'm going to return to it a little bit later when we look at the G2 and the weekly totals. But for right now, let's look at it in terms of the simpler view, which is the percentage of academic blocks where target behavior occurred, meaning non-zeros. These dashes are going to become a little bit more important for the decreasing targets. This blue line right here is a line that you can put for between any two dates. So if I wanted to, for example, just look at this last phase, 12/9 through 1/7, I would just type that in, 12/9, 15 through 1/7, 16, and it will then draw the line accordingly. Now sometimes it does put a little jog in that, depending on the nuances of the data. This is a formula, and sometimes it's an interesting artifact. We can put it, let's say, for the whole time, which is sometimes convenient to do so. So 825. And then it draws a slightly increasing line. We can also extend it out, as long as it's a school day. So we can put, let's say, January 28th. So we can predict. Well, let's take a look at what some of these other behaviors are. Well, quantity of work is looking pretty good. Now, if this line hits 100%, for example, if I was to draw the trend line out to 311, watch what happens. It's going to hit 100. It's not going to go above that. So if I made it go to 418, the line would hit 100%. It would just stop there because there is no more than 100% that a student can earn. Okay, let's take a look at the decreasing targets. You see what happens on this side. It hits 0. So once the trend line goes to 0, it can't go any lower because you can't go any lower than 0%. And so this gives us a nice way to show progress over phases. And as we can see, his verbal aggression and disruption did in fact decrease. Now let's return to these dashes for just a moment. Again, I said this was the percentage of academic blocks where the target behavior occurred. So on this particular day, Pete had verbal aggression during 50% of the academic blocks. So this gives you an idea of how many different blocks something occurred, and it helps to reflect on these percentages, because what we want to do is to have these dashes below and these dots below on the graph, as would be right here in these zeros. Okay, in a case like this, where the dot and the dash overlap, that means that each academic block where there was observation, there was some verbal aggression. There were no zero values. So in other words, on this day, 77% of the points were earned, and 100% of the measurable academic blocks had some kind of verbal aggression in it. We're going to spend more time on the meaning of these dots and dashes later on in another segment. It's actually quite interesting how these two measures coexist on the graph, and they're both very important. Okay, right now I'm just kind of touching on the surface of it. You might think, okay, do I really need that? The answer is yes, as you go into more extensive analysis. But for right now, it's not that important to dig that deep. But I did want to throw some words on this so you can at least understand what they are. So to summarize, dots are the percentage of points earned. Dashes is the percentage of academic blocks where the target behavior occurred, meaning cells that did not have a zero in it, had some kind of number. There's a secondary meaning, which is also the maximum percentage that could have been earned in those non-zero cells. And again, we'll talk about that at another time. Okay, so that is really all I want to say about these graphs right now. They're very useful, and I put them on the left side here of all the tabs because I go to these graphs frequently. These are my go-to graphs. All right, let's take a look at G2. Again, note that we've got the purple boxes on the right, and I often start with G2 when I go into a classroom to review data because weekly analyses is a nice summary. You know, the data analysis from G1 is really convenient for that kind of magnified daily approach, but there's a lot of variation that goes on from day to day. So I like to look at G2 because it gives me a weekly summary instead. And again, I can start with Pete by clicking on his name, which it already is, and I go to Corey and I can look at Corey's data, and I can look at Phyllis's data, and so forth, and Rex, and you get the idea. Let's stay with Rex because that's where we're at right now. Well, we can look at both increasing and decreasing targets. What we're looking for is the of course, the green dots to go up to 100%. That's the goal. But you'll note here that instead of it being a dash for these black lines, well, they are black lines, but instead of it being a dash, which is what it was before, now it's a line. So it has a top and a bottom. When we go to G1, we just have the tops. Okay. The reason I didn't put the bottom, which I'm going to explain in a second what the bottom means, is because it would just get too messy. It's too much data going on here. So I leave just the tops there. And on the G2, I put the top and the bottom, so it becomes a straight line. This line indicates the range of percentages that were available for that week. So you say, well, why wasn't it 100%? The reason why it wasn't 100% is because the student earned zeros. And if the student earns a zero, then there is no number to compute. It's a zero. And so what we want to do is not only look at these percentage dots, which is what the green dots are right here, the percentages for the week. We want to see where the green dot is on this line. This line is the reference line. So even though we want them to be up to 100%, it can't always be 100% as a result of zeros that were earned. So this tells us how the student did when the student did something. And if there were zeros, then of course this percentage is going to drop down. So we want the tops of the bars to be high. We want the dots to be high. All right, that's the goal for the increasing targets. Now, something like this, what it's showing is that he earned all ones for work quality during that week. So the top of the bar is all threes. The bottom of the bar is all ones. That gives you the useful range. Okay, that's important to know. That's the useful range. That's the possible range given that something was measured. And so all ones, and what I mean by measured, I mean other than zero. All ones, all threes. So we want the dots to be high on the bar, and ideally we want, for increasing targets, we want that bar to be high as well. So green dot up here, top of the bar up here is what we're looking for. In fact, if we look at, I think, let's hop back to Phyllis for a second. Okay, this is telling us that 100% of the academic blocks for appropriate social interchange for Phyllis had a non-zero value, meaning a 1, 2, or a 3. And what we're looking for are these green dots to go up to the top. That's the ideal position right there. Okay, let's go back to Rex cars. And so why are these dots not, they're at the top of the bars, but why aren't the bars higher? Because he earned a lot of zeros for work quality. There are just too many of them, and that makes this bar go low. All right, we don't have these other increasing targets, but let's take a look at his decreasing targets. Here, 100% of the academic blocks that were measured had some kind of rating in it that was not a 0. That's why it's 100%. So this is the total opposite of what we want, what we do want are for these dots to be low. Now there are bars, there are vertical bars here. They're just too small to see. So when the bar is totally obscured by the dot, that's a good thing, because it means there were not very many academic blocks where the behavior occurred as well. And we can see verbal aggression made a big change, and we can go back to the G1 and find out what kind of things occurred between October 9th and November 6th for Rex. And in fact, it turns out that there was an aide that was assigned to the classroom. So it's one of the improvements that were made. And there were some other behavior plan changes as well. Okay, again, the percentage is important, but it's important in relation to the line, the vertical line. So even though the percentage dropped, we have to look to see where it is on that line, because that line, the vertical line, tells us what the usable percentage range is. Okay, I'm gonna put a bookmark in those words and not go into it in more detail, because I want to save that for the advanced analysis segment. So this is more of an overview. Okay, G3. G3 is a great report, and the data from G3 right here is what gets linked to the IEP generator, which we'll cover at another time. All right, what we have here are 2 columns for each target behavior. Again, we didn't have for Rex the 3rd and 4th increasing target. What are these columns? Well, let's just look at physical aggression. The rating tells us the percentage of the percentage of rating points that were earned for that month. Okay, this first table is a monthly table. The second column is the occurrence. That is, what is the percentage of academic blocks where the target behavior occurred? Well, you can see that the rating went up. He earned higher and higher ratings for physical aggression, which was, of course, not a good thing. And we can see that the occurrence increased as well. And often these numbers do go hand in hand. You're doing it more intensely, and you're doing it more in more academic blocks. So rating is the percentage of the rating points earned. So what is the total of the points divided by the possible number of points to get a percentage? The occurrence is the percentage of academic blocks where the target behavior occurred. And then we have that familiar stick and dot presentation for a monthly analysis. And then we also have the quarterly summaries, which is a very convenient way of making quarterly reports for school reports that you must do as requested by your principal. All right. The AB series of graphs offers a tremendous amount of information regarding behavior during each of the academic blocks. We have the graph here, this very interesting 3D graph with the increasing and decreasing target behaviors, and we have the table. I'm going to go ahead and focus on the table because it gives us an easier way to see all the information. For example, transition problems is kind of hidden behind refusal as the way the the graphs are shaped. So let's focus over here, and once again you can see that the names are on the right, so we can click on anyone's name and the data will be updated accordingly. We'll go back to Pete. And the top, you can see we have the ability to analyze data from a particular time period. In this case, we started on 9/15 and we're going through the rest of the year. As TPS ignores blanks, we don't have to worry about the fact that we don't have data all the way through the end of the year. So this is our time period. If we wanted to record from the beginning of the year, we could go 8/24, and we'll just go ahead and do that. And that increases our numbers because we're including more data. Alright, so we have our increasing targets. We've never collected any data here, and that's why it's blank. And we have our decreasing targets. Let's go through the sequence of graphs. This is occurrence, as you can see, of increasing and decreasing target behaviors per academic block. This is the number of academic blocks where the target behavior occurred. Now we're expecting to see that there was quality of work measured during many of these increasing target behaviors, many of these academic blocks for these increasing target behaviors. We expect to see high numbers here. There were 506 academic blocks where some kind of quantity of work was measured. In this particular graph, the increasing target behaviors are not as important as the decreasing target behaviors. We don't really know what the number should be here in terms of how high this should go. If it's a very low number, like a 2 or a 3 for something that's important, then we might question it and take another look. But what's more important in this graph is the right side, which is the number of academic blocks where each target behavior occurred. That was we want to be 0. See, we know what the value should be. We want it to be 0, like we see right here. So no physical aggression was observed during dismissal. On the other hand, we see verbal aggression, 34 academic blocks, 21 academic blocks, 46 academic blocks there was refusal, and 49 academic blocks there were transition problems. So this gives us a good idea of where the behavior was occurring. Now we don't know from this particular graph how many times a behavior could have been recorded, but was not, because the student exhibited no decreasing target behaviors. In other words, we see that 9 times, for example, there were academic blocks where verbal aggression and disruption were recorded during social studies, but we don't know how many times zeros were recorded, and that's okay. You can't put all of that information in one table. We're going to answer that question, though, in the third table in this series. Okay, so hold off on that particular analysis until we get down a little bit. The percentage of increasing and decreasing target behaviors. This is a percentage of the rating points earned. We want hundreds over here, so this table side becomes important again. We want to see hundreds. We know what it should be. The maximum is 100. That's desirable. Here is the decreasing target behaviors. We want these to be zeros. Again, we can see specials. We have high percentage of rating points earned. We want to see that go down, actually. Okay. This is the percentage of occurrence. That means of the numbers that were recorded up on top here, of these quantities, what do these quantities represent in terms of the potential of recording? Meaning, how many cells did that represent? What percentage of those numbers were, let's try that again. These numbers were what percentage of all possible academic blocks where recording was done. Okay, there, I said it. And what we see here is that number that was in the first table represents 80% of the possible score. So we see that we're recording data in a pretty high percentage of times when data was available. Now in this case, it's 23%. That means that we recorded only 23% specials. The 15 academic blocks where there was quality of work represents 23% of the possible recordings, which means that there were a lot of zeros that were contained in the data recording there for quality of work, which indicates some problems also with independence. So we see problems in the increasing side as well. We want to see hundreds. That's 23%. Again, what is the percentage that the numbers in this first table, I keep moving up to show you that, what is the percentage of academic blocks that the numbers here, these quantities, represent? So we said, well, maybe 9 is low, but how many other opportunities were there? In other words, how many other zeros were collected? Turns out that the 9 represents 13% of the possible academic blocks. So during social studies and science, verbal aggression occurred in 13% of the possible academic blocks where recording occurred. So it helps us to validate not only these numbers here, but also these percentages. And we'll get into more of that in a more advanced lesson. And the average rating is just that. We take out the zeros and we say when the behavior was observed, how intense was it? And this gives us a good value here to analyze, because we want to see 3s and we want to see zeros here. And again, what this is also telling me is that social studies and science, when Pete was verbally aggressive, it actually was quite high, even though the percentage of occurrence was low. So, and the reason why that would be a fairly low percentage over here is because this does include all of the zero blocks where he did not exhibit that behavior at all. So make a very long and detailed story short, you need all of these graphs to be able to interpret all of the possible interactions that can occur with the analysis of behavior per academic block. We'll get into more of this at the more advanced lesson. D1 is a really great analysis. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Again, we have our familiar purple boxes on the right. There are a lot of numbers here, and I don't want to get bogged down in all the detail at this level, but what I want to discuss right now is that this is the count of incidents. Again, we have our blue boxes up on top. Count of incidences of getting a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3 for quality work, quantity of work, and independence. So how many times was Pete given a high rating for quality of work? Well, 105 times. How many times did he get a medium rating? 101. A low rating? 32. And 0, 67. And then it gives us the average rating without the 0 included, because that would really change the value. And a total incidence of 238 times, which is this total right here. And how many on the daily basis. So not all of these are valuable for increasing targets because we expect some of these numbers to be high, but there's not a particular number that we're looking for because we don't know how many times those academic blocks were recorded with quality of work. These percentages of occurrence is right here. So 105 is represents 34% of this total right here. We can also analyze going down across the academic blocks. Decreasing targets emphasizes a few additional numbers here. In this case, all of the values that we put here are relevant because we know what they should be in terms of zeros. We want them to all be zeros, so it gives us a reference point that is more important for the count of incidents, and the percentage of incidents is going to tell us what these percentages, what these counts again represent in terms of the percentage of occurrence. So for verbal aggression, he was rated 57 times high, and that represents 9% of the ratings. What is important, that's not so important up here, and the increasing is important for the decreasing, is the incidents per day. 2.5 academic blocks had verbal aggression, 1.2 physical aggression, 1.2 academic blocks, 4.2 had refusal, and tells us that on a daily basis there are 11 academic blocks where there are decreasing target behaviors. The reason why it's more than 10, because there are only 10 blocks, right, is because these are added up. So we can look at them individually, or we can get a total. 820 incidences, meaning academic blocks, 820 academic blocks for 71 days of data. That's a convenient thing right there. 71 days of data, 820 academic blocks with some kind of behavior, and we can look at how they are broken out. And there's a lot of information on this table. Again, we're not going to go into too much detail because it's just an overview. Correlation, I'm going to go ahead and skip that for right now. I will say it just tells us how the increasing target behaviors are correlated with each other and with decreasing target behaviors. So I want to save that one for a little bit later. The P series is going to tell us, we don't see any data here, but it's the points. I'm going to go back here. It's whatever information we put in this extra column is going to be displayed here. This is those extra points or percentages, if they're tests or whatever it is that you put there. It's going to show the progression of those data over the school year across, or I mean within each academic block. So you can see, for example, if you were doing math test scores, you can see the dots. And if I were to put something here, let's say during math you were doing test scores and maybe he got a 56, and then maybe sometime later he got a 67, and then maybe sometime later he got a 79, and then we'll do one more. We'll put in a 98. He got a great score. And then when we graph that and go back to P1, we see that these are his math test scores, and it's a convenient way to show progress. All right, P2 is going to show that same progress, but it's going to summarize it for the entire day. Now, if you're doing test scores, this graph is not going to be important. If you're doing stars or points, for classroom participation or something like that, where it makes sense to total it, of course you wouldn't get 98 of them, but we'll leave that number there. And let's say he, earned 33 and 22 during breakfast and special, so 153 points. When we go over here, we'll see that. We have to graph it. I don't have the individual graphing on this graph yet, but I'll put that in the next update. And you can see what we've totaled up here. So this is just a daily total. It may not be relevant depending on what your individual points mean. P3 is an analysis of the weekly summary. It's a weekly summary of the total points. Again, depending on what kind of numbers you put there, that may or may not be important. Okay. Let's move this along. E1, E2, and E3 are just counts of academic blocks. Did it happen? Did it not happen? So this gives us a way of looking at the occurrence of daily count of occurrence for a particular target behavior. It's repeated as a weekly summary and as a monthly, quarterly, and yearly summary. Just a count of academic blocks. R1 and R2 are not used that often, but I'm going to explain what it is. R1 are the increasing targets, R2 are the decreasing targets, and what this tells us is each day what was the value that was collected during arrival for quality of work, quantity of work, and independence. And you can see, let's make that a little bit bigger, you can see that for this particular graph we're just recording quantity of work for a while. Let's move down and let's see, here we go, social studies. So we're recording quality of work, quantity of work, and independence with stars or diamonds, dots, and X's. And because during a given academic block of social studies all three of these could receive the same value, they can overlap and you can still see the individual icon for each of these. So that picture right there, that shape with the diamond, dot, and X means that for social studies, Pete earned a 3 on that particular day for all of them. Of course, on some days he might get a 3 for quantity of work, and he might get a 2 for quality and independence. And so this tells us, as time goes forward to the right, what are the individual measures on a daily basis. So it gives us a way of looking at data in that way. Again, decreasing targets, and the J series is going to be the average of the rating. So this gives us an intensity measure. What is the average for the day for quality of work, average of the day for quantity of work, and independence, and verbal aggression, and all the other measures. Gives us an intensity measure for the day, for the week, and for the month. So it's a very convenient way to look at intensity, and we can see that in fact the intensity is going down, which is a good thing. And then we have our quarterly summaries as well. Okay, well, that was a lot. Even though I was trying to keep it pretty superficial, there were some times when I did provide you more detail than that, and so I hope it gives you a good feel for the power of TPS to analyze data. Some of these graphs we will take a more in-depth look at in the future, and I did forget to go over W-sum, but we'll save that for another time. And so there you have it, a summary of TPS graphs. Once again, my name is Lewis Weber. Thank you for participating in TPS training.